A brief history of boats and marriage. Young Harold Perkins and I were out in my workshop the other day discussing one of our favorite topics. Harold got married a while back, but as he says, he still likes to look. Well, just as Harold was saying, "Pat, this Megan has the sweetest little curves you ever saw," my wife, Bun, walked in. Old Bun just flipped out. "Terrific," Bun snapped. "That's really terrific, Harold. Here you are, married less than 3 months with a baby on the way, and you're already carrying on like that. Boy, this is so disgusting. I would expect that sort of thing from old what's-his-name here, but not from you, Harold." I studied Harold to see if he had developed any of the essential marital reflexes yet. I wasn't surprised to see that he hadn't. He stood there, looking embarrassed and apologetic. I let him suffer for a few seconds, and then stepped in and saved him. "What are you getting so upset about?" I said to Bun. "We're just talking about women." "Women?" Bun said. "Oh, gee, please excuse me, Harold. I thought you were talking about boats." "No," I said, "just beautiful women, the ones who find me so attractive." "Yeah, I know the type," Bun said, "the ones who like pudgy old guys." Before I could whittle a retort to a sharp point, she slipped away, chuckling fiendishly. I find fiendish chuckling very unbecoming in a woman, and I plan to tell Bun so, too. "So, where were we?" I said to Harold, who still seemed a bit shaken up. You were telling me about Megan?" "Yeah, right," Harold said. "This Megan is a real beauty. She's a 20-footer tied up to the pier at Doc's Boat Works, if you want to take a look at her. But tell me something. How come Bun got so upset when she thought we were talking about boats?" I was surprised that Harold knew so little about the facts of marital life. Here was a hip young man, 24 years old, married about 3 months, baby on the way, and no one apparently had ever sat him down and had a man-to-man talk with him about boats and marriage. As I've often advocated, we need a boat education course in the schools. Otherwise, youngsters are simply going to pick up on the streets and playgrounds a lot of misinformation about boats. Then they enter into matrimony, holy or otherwise, with their heads crammed full of nonsense. No wonder 50% of all marriages now end in divorce. "Sit down, Harold," I said. "Let me tell you something about the relationship between a man, his wife, and his boats. First of all, the proper understanding of boats is essential to marital bliss. Otherwise, the reference to boats would not be included in marriage vows, as in, 'Do you promise to love, honor, and obey your husband and not speak ill of his boats?'" "Gee, boats weren't referred to in our marriage vows," Harold said. "They weren't," I said. "Too late to do anything about that now. You've got to slip the guy performing the ceremony an extra $10 to get that phrase in. Well worth the dough, too, I can tell you that. But what good does it do? Bun speaks ill of your boats all the time." "Yeah, but she doesn't honor and obey me either. You see what I mean?" "No." "Well, there you go. You young guys today can't seem to follow a simple line of reasoning. Anyway, as I was about to say, since almost the beginning of humankind, men have been driven by this vague but powerful urge to cross over bodies of water without getting wet." I went on to give Harold a brief history of boats and wives, which is as follows. In the beginning, or maybe a little before, early man tried to satisfy his urge for crossing bodies of water by running really fast over the surface of lakes, but that, as you know, proved unsuccessful, particularly for trolling. That also is one of the main reasons scientists now believe early man may have had webs between his toes, and probably between his ears, too. Then, according to pictographs found on the walls of caves in Montana, which at that time was a small suburb of Kansas City, a man by the name of Org, or possibly Gore, discovered that by clinging to a log and kicking with his feet, he could propel himself across water. He started with a little 12-foot log, moved up to a 16, then an 18, and finally a 22-footer. A pattern followed even today by boat buyers. Org told his mate, Gord, that he thought he really needed a 30-footer. But she said, "Ye gods, Org, not another log. You already have 4. Oddly enough, this attitude of wives toward boats is still prevalent. Org found the log not totally satisfactory as a flotation device. Seldom was he able to bring one of his logs up to planing speed, and then only because he was hotly pursued by a herd of venomous water spiders the size of sage grouse. Besides their other drawbacks, Org also found the logs difficult to trailer, not realizing the wheel hadn't yet been invented. For a while he tried using Gord as a boat trailer, but had too much trouble hooking up her lights, at the time merely small dabs of flaming pitch. Even now, wives cringe at the mention of boat trailer lights. That is because one of the major marital functions of a wife is to stand behind the boat trailer and respond to her husband's questions as he lies amid a tangle of wires beneath the towing vehicle. "Now, what light is on? Are you sure it's the left turn signal? Right. Okay, now, did the right tail light flicker? It didn't. Right." It finally occurred to Org that if the log were hollowed out, he could sit inside it and remain dry while crossing over water. He employed a clan of Neanderthals to hollow out a log with stone axes. Unfortunately, he made the mistake of paying them by the hour and soon went bankrupt. Note: some boat repair shops appear to employ Neanderthals with stone axes even today. However, they are only crude replicas. True Neanderthal man became extinct thousands of years ago, much to his surprise and disappointment, because he had been looking forward to Monday Night Football. 3 centuries later, the log was finally hollowed out, but, tragically, Org was not around to see his idea come to fruition. As a result, no one knew the reason for hollowing out the log in the first place, so it was used as a fruit bowl. Then, a young Homo sapiens by the name of Dick thought it might be fun to put the hollowed-out log in the river and paddle about in it, which he did. The significance of Dick's discovery, however, went unnoticed by the clan elders, who became concerned about the sanitary effects of a naked man paddling about in their fruit bowl. As one of the elders said, "Are you crazy, Dick? We got to eat out of that thing." Thus are many of the great scientific advances misunderstood by ignorant and short-sighted leaders. Eventually, the hollowed-out log became accepted as a means of getting about on water. Propulsion was accomplished by pushing or paddling the log about with sticks. But then a man by the name of Norman came up with an ingenious idea. He strapped his next-door neighbor, Ralph, to the stern of the boat and tossed a couple of the venomous water spiders in behind him. To Norman's delight, he discovered that he could by this means get 2 or 3 knots out of Ralph on a calm day. By adding or reducing the number of water spiders, he could control the speed of his boat. Little did Norman realize that he had invented not only the first outboard motor, but also a crude form of the throttle. Fueled by nothing more than a few inexpensive water spiders, Ralph would roar about the lake for half an hour or more, often becoming quite hoarse. When Norman told his wife, Vera, about his amazing invention, she could scarcely contain herself, finally shouting out, "I wish you would stop messing with that stupid hollow log and do some work around this place." Even now, variations of this same cryptic plea reverberate through the homes of boaters, but so far remain indecipherable. Sadly, Norman never lived to profit from his invention. He vanished one day after running out of spiders and asking Ralph to help him round up a few dozen to get back home on. Ralph came home alone, paddling the boat with the thigh bone of a thesaurus. Everyone expected Norman eventually to return with wonderful tales about his adventures, although Ralph was fairly pessimistic about that possibility. Ralph, incidentally, made his own contribution to science. He demonstrated how the thigh bone of a thesaurus could be used for knocking some sense into people's heads. As a result, Neanderthal man soon became extinct. Neanderthal woman, on the other hand, at last liberated from the drudgery of cave-keeping, went on to prosper, and today puts in frequent appearances on the Phil Donahue Show. Well, I told Harold, that's all the time I have for the history of boats and wives. I think I'll go down to the pier and take a look at this Megan. You're going to absolutely love Megan, Harold said. At that moment, Bun returned. What about loving Megan? She asked, her eyes narrowing to mean slits. She's the new barmaid down at Kelly's Bar and Grill, Harold said. The kid learns fast, I'll say that for him.